today we are at the Aviation Museum here at Taqali, and I am with Joe Anastasi during this beautiful show. It is an annual exhibition that the Hisoric Motorcycle Club do each year. And here is one of the founders of the Hisoric Motorcycle Club. So Joe, how did the club begin, basically? How did it start?
In the club previous to this, the only club for historic vehicles, and I say vehicles, not just motorcycles, because it was cars, military vehicles and motorcycles, was the CVC before.
Okay.
I was the motorcycle representative within the CVC at the time.
So it consisted of different categories, actually.
That's right. There were 3 different sections, but what used to annoy me and my other motorcycling friends was that every meeting that we had, cars were discussed and bikes were never spoken about.
They were like second class.
Second classes, if you like. And that annoyed us to a certain extent, and we decided one day that we would withdraw from the CVC. And that was probably the best thing that ever happened, not just for us, because we formed the HMC immediately, but automatically the other 2 clubs liked the idea of being on their own as well.
Okay.
And suddenly we had the OMC, Old Motors Club, and we had the Military Vehicles Club.
So other
clubs
as well. Came out from the original?
Basically there was one club, and then we ended up with 3 clubs. The Hisoric Motorcycle Club, which was us, the Old Motors Club, and the Military Vehicles. So, although it sounded like a bad idea at the beginning, it ended up as a very good idea, because in fact all 3 clubs are still very, very active nowadays and doing their job. We look after and preserve old motorcycles, the car lot do the same, and the military lot do the same.
This year the club and also the other 2 clubs which came out from the one big club that there was before is celebrating the 35th anniversary.
35 years, exactly.
And you were one of the founders of this club, right?
I was, yes. A couple of days ago I happened to be looking at an old film from 1992, in fact. Okay. And I couldn't believe...
The year I was born, actually.
And I couldn't believe how active we were. It was a film of all the activities that we had, the runs. The Saturday runs, there were always at least 20 motorcycles, always on the Saturday runs. Also, because I had my own little museum in St. Paul's Bay, in my garage where I worked, I had lots and lots of visitors always, particularly English visitors coming. And I had one bike in particular that is known within all the old members as Rent-A-Bike, which was a plunger flame golden flash. That was always there ready for any guests that came. Listen, you can join us for a ride if you like.
And just a curiosity question, what happened to this bike, the Golden Flash?
I swapped it. I know this is sacrilege.
Okay.
I swapped it with a Suzuki.
All right.
A modern Suzuki.
But at that time that was the thought of me.
No, I just wanted a modern bike. Somebody offered me, somebody suggested I sell that and another bike, and I sold them. And the other bike that went with it actually was perhaps the bike I regret selling most, which was a 1938 Red Hunter 500. Red Hunter, that was a fantastic bike. I have yet to ride a 500 with as powerful an engine as that.
So even your HRD is not at that level? Okay,
no,
okay.
No, the Ariel 500 was such a strong engine. One of the events that we'd had within the first few years of the club was a 24-hour marathon.
All right.
It was sponsored by Slim Alliance, or done for Slim Alliance.
I've seen some photos, I think, when I came at your house.
Okay. We had 2 marathons. And on these marathons, basically, we had to keep motorcycles going around a particular route. I had designed the route around Malta, 52 miles per lap.
Okay.
52 miles a lap it was. It was going to take roughly 2 hours per lap, we calculated. And we organized this event around this. You didn't use the same bike for 24 hours, obviously, but you could use as many motorcycles. The important thing was that there was at least one motorcycle going down the route at some time during the 24 hours. In fact, we ended up with at least a dozen motorcycles going around all the time, day and night as well. Of my collection, I had chosen to ride, I think it was 6 or 7 different bikes of mine. I remember the first from the start, Albert Pisani and I started together, and I was riding my 1931 New Hudson at the time. That was the first lap. But then we decided on various gimmicks to do as well. One of them was, with the Red Hunter in my case, we removed the gear lever. The gear lever was removed from the bike at the start, when I put it in top. I left Slima at the start in top, did the whole 52-mile lap, including some hills like
on the same gear,
like Binjemma, for example, and other hills like that. All of it on 4th gear, and came back.
And even the other bikes had to do some.
No, everybody had to invent
it was
something.
your type
yes.
of challenge.
No, that was a challenge I had. Another one, which we did on the early morning run, when we knew there wasn't much traffic, was with the HRD. I wanted to surprise everybody because everybody was expected normally around the 2-hour mark for a change of lap. And I ended up arriving in about an hour only.
Okay.
Nobody could believe that I had done the whole route. It was good fun.
So speed was always in your blood, basically,
as well.
racing, etc.
And I chose the HRD for that for obvious reasons, because it was the most suitable bike for it.
Mentioning the HRD or area, but you are mostly associated with the BSA, actually, with the BSA branding. Maybe you can explain a bit more about why you are associated with the BSA.
The John Bull Mangel Stores, which was the company that my grandfather founded, and then my father, and then myself, and now my son. We were agents for BSA, importers and agents. Before they started with motorcycles in 1910, we used to import bicycles from BSA, from before the turn of the century, from before 1900. In 1910, BSA made their first motorcycle, and my grandfather started importing motorcycles as well. In fact, there is a 1914 motorcycle still in Malta, which was David Arrigo's, a 570cc single, and that was sold originally by my grandfather as well. That's the oldest one that I know of.
So the business started by your grandfather, and
it
still continues till this day, basically. Now we are near your HRD, basically. Maybe you speak a little about it, explain a bit what we are seeing here.
This is one of only 19 HRD Series B Meteors made in 1948. HRD didn't start for quite a while after the war. In fact, they started in late 1947 producing motorcycles again. And this one is, particular in the fact that, like many of the time, HRD were still using some pre-war parts on the post-war models.
Okay.
In fact, the front mudguard and stays are from the Series A, which was the pre-war model. People ask me questions about this, but why has it got that mudguard? That's different.
So normally the Series B have a different.
The Series B has a
mudguard.
slightly bigger, wider mudguard and different stays. Yes.
They were still in a transition phase, basically.
That's right. The rear fork is slightly different as well, and this is a Series A rear fork as well, which is used on this one because it was one of the first ones.
But it's original.
Yes, absolutely. They wanted to get rid of a whole lot of parts that they had since before the war, and that was the way to do it. So the very first Series Bs had a lot of Series A parts on them.
One question that many has in mind, there is the famous 1000.
Yes.
Is it basically the same frame?
It's exactly the same, everything, just a 1000 engine instead of the
So it just has an extra.
In fact, this is literally half of the 1000.
And basically it's the same
They
tank.
use a lot of, yes, even cylinder heads, for example, the cylinder heads are the same, valves are the same.
Even the braking system?
Yes, even the braking system.
Okay.
The braking system is a bit particular, in fact, because it's got 2 drums in the front and 2 drums in the rear.
Okay.
as well.
That's 1948.
And that's 1948, and it's already got suspension.
Ah, yes.
It's already got suspension like the modern ones, monoshock. Like the monoshock.
I loved hearing it last week, passing by me when riding it in the Indina Grand Prix. Basically, I was riding the Dimensionless GTL, of course. It's at the 50cc.
Joshua was riding.
Yeah, your son was riding the HRD, and there's no comparison, of course, when it comes to speed. And he just flew beside me, and I was like, wow.
With the 350, yes. But like I said earlier, that aerial still impresses me.
What year was the aerial?
1938.
Oh, and it was even earlier.
The pre-war one.
Is it still present, or you don't know?
Yes, it's still present as I left it. Still
preserved, basically.
I had restored it and everything, and I used to ride it quite a bit as well.
And sold it.
And then I sold it, yes. But that's another thing.
Can you tell us more about this Triumph? I'm seeing that it is hand change, and you've already told me that it is your first bike that you have restored, right?
It was my first old bike, as it were, when I started collecting old bikes, because when I was 18 I had a BSA 350 B40.
Okay.
And then I had a Golden Flash,
and at that time it wasn't considered old bike?
No, that wasn't an old bike at all. That was a period bike.
You're talking about the 1960s?
I'm talking about 60s, that's right, 60s, 70s. Then in the late 70s, or perhaps early 80s, I started collecting old motorcycles. I don't know what possessed me, but I saw this at Bully Beef, the electrician.
He owned it actually?
Yes, I didn't know what it was. It was in quite a state, but I thought it's a good bike to start with. And I bought this Triumph, which is a 1934 350 Mark V. I didn't know even what it was at the time at all. I restored it as I thought would be right.
How did your grandpa or your father take it? Because you've bought a Triumph now, not a BSA. And you were the importers of the BSA brand.
Yes, well, I mean, I was collecting old motorcycles, and so, but talking about BSAs, I had, by the late 90s or mid 90s, I had almost every single model of BSA that we had sold. One of each, at least. Super Rocket, Golden Flash of all sorts.
You had a mini museum, basically, because you said at some point.
Getting back to this one, I bought it as it was, restored it as I thought was right, put a pillion seat on it, and one particular day, Carolyn and I had gone off to Gozo, and we went on this bike. And as we were waiting at the ferry, an English couple came and started looking at the bike, and this chap was looking everywhere and taking photos everywhere of this bike, and I thought, and he asked me whether it was mine, and he introduced himself. He was Peter Cornelius, the VMCC pre-war Triumph Mark Specialist, which was an incredible combination when you think about it. And he told me what it was. He told me it was a Mark V. He told me it was 1934, because I didn't even know any of this at all. And he also offered to send me as much literature as possible so I could restore it as it was, which he did very kindly. And in fact, when a couple of years later, I bought the older 1928 Triumph, the NSD. Again, I didn't know what it was. It looked old. I bought it. The price was right, and I sent him some photos of it as it was. And he sent me a lot of information about it.
And he helped you once again to restore.
Not only with that, it didn't have mudguards on it when I bought it. It didn't have a chain guard. It didn't have a rear stand. It didn't have a lot of stuff.
We're talking about the NSD now.
The NSD now. And he actually sent me, got somebody to make for me, some specialist, to make a proper set of mudguards and stands and everything else.
Oh, a remake, but based on the original.
Based on the original, yes, that's right.
Because he was part of the establishment.
That's
basically.
right, exactly. So
well, you were fortunate enough to meet him.
That was a really lucky find, exactly, meeting Peter Cornelius. Peter died a couple of years ago, and recently I got in touch with his son, in fact. Or his son got in touch with me. in fact.
Is his son also an enthusiast?
I think
of
he
bikes?
is, yes.
Okay,
I think he
yeah,
is.
that's interesting.
Yes.
One question: was this bought new in Malta, basically, or you don't know?
I suspect it was. I suspect it was bought new. It was always a civilian bike.
Okay.
And this is why Buleviv sold it to me, because he was only interested in military bikes. He
right.
bought it thinking it was a military bike, and when he realized it wasn't, then he wasn't interested
He
in
lost
it.
interest, basically.
He wasn't interested in it, and he sold it to
are
me.
there more of these bikes actually here? I've never seen another one here in Malta, but
I have a 1936 one as well, which was not hand changed, had a different gearbox.
a bit of differences.
And the valves were enclosed, whereas this one these valves are open.
Yeah. Open, yeah.
I believe Clive has a military one from 1936 or 37 as well.
Okay, so pre-war, yeah, but still military. That's interesting. So let's pass on to the other remaining two. Thank you. Joe, now we are near beside the NSD basically. So the one that you've mentioned already.
That's right. The NSD I bought from Zabuj. I don't know how I got in touch with this guy.
From my town, basically.
It was a mess. It was an absolute mess. It was basically a fuel tank, a frame, and an engine and wheels. Nothing else. But it looked interesting, and this is why I bought it in those days.
Which year is it?
1928.
Okay.
This is I didn't know that at the time. I knew it was an early one, obviously, but I didn't know anything about it. And it was, like we said already, Peter Cornelius that helped me out. Helped me out with it. I restored it completely, and it's a nice little fun bike to ride.
So it's been a lot of years since you restored this bike, actually?
Yes, in the 80s.
Oh, in the 80s?
In the 80s as well.
And it's still basically
as it was when I restored it in the 80s, and as you know, I use my bikes quite a bit.
Yes, multiple rallies and every year, actually.
The Triumph and the HRD, the other Triumph, the 1934 Triumph and the HRD have been everywhere. With the HRD in I think it was 92, I did the Milano-Taranto rally, which was 1,000 miles. It was the Milano-Taranto was the equivalent of the car Mille Miglia. Which was 1,000 miles as well.
Exactly.
And this one ran from Milan in the north of Italy right down to the southern tip in Taranto. In those days, of course, when it was held in the 30s, it was a race, non-stop. You can imagine.
So you were a time trial, basically?
I didn't do it as a race, no. When I did it in '92, it was the evocation of it, if you like, with the old bikes. But of course, it was over 4 days, comfortable hotels, nice meals, etc., etc., and a lovely route, because going right down Italy, we did most of the passes and everything else. That was with the HRD. The HRD I've also done a couple of Irish rallies with, and
along with Albert Pisani, I think.
With Albert and others, and also our Giro di Mimmo that we do, which is a week in Sicily, touring Sicily, with a friend of ours who invites us every year to join him.
Excellent.
I've done probably about 8 or 9 Giros at least.
So they are not only museum pieces, but they are actually used?
No, I dislike museum pieces. I think people should ride their own bikes. They're certainly very rideable and very enjoyable to ride.
Excellent. I'm seeing your other green bike, be it the BSA, so we can talk a bit about it.
This is an interesting one. It's a 1928 as well, 1928 BSA Model A28.
What is it?
It's a 174cc two-stroke, and as you can see, there isn't even a front brake on it, and it's got just a 2-speed gearbox. And this is why it was a total fiasco in terms of sales. Very few of them were sold, and in fact, according to the VMCC records, there are only 3 or 4 still known to exist in the world, and this is one of them.
Which makes it
it quite rare and valuable, yes, in fact. Although, having said that, a little 1928 174cc, I don't even dare try and ride it. Too heavy for it, I'm sure.
But at least one can appreciate the simplicity
It is
And-
very
and
simple.
Basically, the
outside
technology of the
flywheel,
time. Yeah.
outside flywheel, just a simple little two-stroke.
Very, very interesting. Thanks a lot, Joe.
Pleasure.
And I am going to take a bit more of close-up shots to the other bikes
Of
as
all
well.
the other bikes. Most of the BSAs you'll see here were sold by my grandfather and my father.
Okay.
Most
And
of
then basically you stopped when the company.
When BSA died, that was it, yes. So we were BSA agents from day one right till the very end.
An interesting fact which we shall mention actually is that you were the first Dunlop importers,
Dunlop importers were the oldest Dunlop importers in the world, again.
which is still active, basically. You
Dunlop
are
is still active, yes. And we're still active today, yes.
Thank you, Joe.
Pleasure.
And enjoy these
Thank you.
bikes.
Thank you.
Thank you.